I met Pete McCarthy several times. I always enjoyed his company. He lived up in the northwest of England, but for professional reasons, he stressed his Irishness. And he went to Ireland to write a book called McCarthy's Bar. When I met him in 2000, I asked him, well, are you actually Irish, Pete?
Almost entirely, apart from the half of me that's English. I grew up in England with one Irish parent and one English parent, so I'm not quite sure what that leaves me. English accent, obviously, but at least 50% Irish sensibility, I think.
So does this make you doubly prone to sort of Irish sentimentality?
I think it makes me a plastic paddy. I think that's the term for it. I don't know whether it makes me doubly prone to Irish sentimentality. I was very aware growing up, it was an English household in an English town, but with lots of Irish stuff around, and with obviously Irish accents and rhythms of speech, and also strange stuff that used to arrive from Ireland in the post as well. We'd get two packages every year. There'd be one that would come either on St Patrick's Day or just before it, which would be a cardboard box full of shamrock. So you could wear it going to school, which would make fights easier to start in the playground. And then just a few days before Christmas, a nude turkey would arrive in a sack. It'd probably be illegal now, I suspect, but someone on the family farm would pluck a turkey, put it in a sack, put some stamps on the sack and an address label, and it would arrive in time for Christmas. This went on until I went away for university. I'm not quite sure when it stopped, actually. So Irishness was always a factor growing up.
Yeah, and you grew up actually in Warrington.
I did, yeah.
Where the air smelt of soap, so you knew it was clean.
That's right. I was there only last week, and I got off the train, and there is still the same smell in the air. And when it's a hot day, it really gets you in the back of the throat as well.
Can you get nostalgic for that?
For the soapy smell? Well, I could smell that anywhere in the world, and I would know I was on the platform at Banky Station, yes. I mean, there was always the smell of soap in Warrington, but I went to secondary school in St Helens, which always smelled of breweries. So whenever I smell that, that malty, hoppy brewing smell, again, wherever I am in the world, I'm just immediately transported back to St Helens.
At the back of this book, you say, we all go to work somewhere, but thanks very much indeed to my family who tolerated me saying I was going to work.
My children are growing up with a very distorted idea of reality, I think. Yes, I mean, my eldest girl is now, she's 12 this week, and so from when she was very small, I was doing travelogue for Channel 4, so going to work, was packing a suitcase and going to Fiji or China. And last year, going to work meant going and wandering around the bars and mountains of the west of Ireland.
Some of the traditional jobs that have gone, like wheelwright, and smith. And what have we got in our place? Webmaster and travel writer. It's a great time to be alive, isn't it?
I know. There were all those Cuban healers in the 60s, but they, who were made redundant in the early 70s, yes. Probably retrained. They'll have to retrain again now, I think.
Yeah, what is it that makes you particularly good at your chosen calling, then, do you think?
That makes one, or that makes me?
That makes you.
Well, very nice of you to say so. I think when I was doing travelogue, you quickly developed an eye for the incongruous or the distinctive, because I would plead for more time in a place. Often TV companies expect you to get off the plane and hit the tarmac performing a piece to camera, delivering an opinion on a place when you've not yet gone through customs. Yeah. So I'd always try and go a day or two before and just mooch about. I'm a great one for the first thing I like to do when I arrive in a place is go and sit in a bar, not the hotel bar, a bar or a cafe. Just go and sit somewhere where people go, read a local paper if I can, try and get oriented like that. But I quickly found with the kind of things I was doing for travelogue, just the street sign or the display in the shop window or the bizarre juxtaposition of dog and traffic warden or whatever it might be. So I found this game very handy. When I was travelling around Ireland, you have your tendrils are out for this kind of thing all the time.
Yeah, I mean, there's one bit where, we've all seen those police dramas where you have good cop and bad cop. Well, of course, in Ireland, they're dressed in dog collars.
Yeah, good priest, bad priest.
Yes. And I was wondering whether these masochistic tendencies that you obviously exhibited
have been with you a long time. Because you didn't go to public school, did you?
No, I didn't go to public school.
No, so you've obviously found these on your own.
There's a good joke about going to public school in the book, though.
It's about page 8 at the beginning, isn't it?
That's right, right. That'll be the suppository gag.
Yes. Where you went to Stuttgart.
That's right, when I went to... Because yes...
Hepatitis, wasn't it?
The twinning system, whereby if you live in Penzance or Lewis or somewhere beautiful like that, you get twinned with another beautiful place in Europe. And if you live in Warrington or St Helens, you get twinned with another industrial casualty, as we did. So the first time I ever went abroad, other than to Ireland, which didn't count as abroad, the first time I ever went abroad was to Stuttgart. And I kid you not, the high spot of the visit was a trip to the local ball bearing factory. So anyway, I contracted hepatitis while I was there. And as I say in the book, the doctor, he was an elderly German man in little wire-framed glasses, not the most reassuring sight in the world when you've spent the last term doing a project on Joseph Mengele, the Angel of Death. And he turned up and he tried to explain to me in school, but I'd turned yellow and I was losing weight, and he tried to explain what had to be done with this enormous tablet, and I didn't know about suppositories then. It was one of the things Mum and Dad had omitted to tell me. And he mimed it, and I thought, well, surely not. And as I say in the book, if my parents had wanted me to have objects pushed up my bottom, they could have sent me to public school, not to the local grammar school, I suppose.
Which brings us back.
That's right. It does, eventually. Where were we, anyway?
I know exactly where we were.
Good man.
We're about chapter 10. And it's a map. You start the chapter intriguingly with saying that in some early century map, there's a map of Ireland.
We're in County Donegal.
We are, yeah. And the only thing that was actually named was this place, and they called it
St Patrick's Purgatory.
Purgatory, yes. And it's still in business.
It's still in business. Well, at the time, seriously, there were in the Middle Ages, I think there were 8 or 9 of these purgatories, they were called, that were places of rigorous and extreme pilgrimage. And the others have they've all been phased out for one reason or another. But the one in County Donegal, it's been a place of pilgrimage continually for at least 1,000 years. They reckon that St Patrick went there, but of course they reckon that about everywhere in Ireland, don't they? So maybe he did and maybe he didn't. But it is documented. And I quote a chap called Peter of Cornwall, who a document he wrote in 1200. Which he said, beware, no one leaves Lough Derg without some loss of mind.
So you went.
So I went. I thought, that'll do me. I was visiting my granddad's grave, in West Cork. Is how the trip to Lough Derg came about. Trying to have a bit of ancestral graveside contact. I was looking for the metaphysical side of my trip, and some guy pulled up at the grave alongside in his car, opened the car doors with the Spice Girls playing and started doing a bit of weeding and stuff. And then a phone-in about cat flaps came on. And I thought, this is no good. So I went into the church, and pinned on the notice board was an advert for St Patrick's Purgatory. Must be able to walk and kneel unaided, it said. Barefoot.
You're making it up.
No, I'm not. I copied it down. It's in the book. I copied it down verbatim. And everyone in Ireland knows about this. When I say, I went on this bizarre masochistic pilgrimage. Oh, Lough Derg, they say. Oh, yeah, my grandma goes on that every year. It's a holiday, So I thought you have to walk barefoot. You're not allowed to sleep for the first 2 days and nights. You have to fast from midnight the night before you go there. Unfeasible quantities of kneeling and praying involved. I thought, that'll do me for a weekend.
Yeah, but then they say, just beware the temptation to lie down.
That was the bad priest, the enforcer, I think I called him, because they were like a double act. The first thing you notice when you get there, it was August in Donegal, and I had to wear thermals. That's how bleak this place was. And the first thing you do when you get on the island, you remove all footwear, right? So you remove your footwear, you go walking off to these craggy, rocky beds that you're going to have to march around for the next 3 days in bare feet. 2 priests come walking past, both wearing highly polished black leather brogues. And that's when you realise that you're not in this together. You're meant to be barefoot to show respect to the holy ground, but it doesn't apply. They're exempt for some reason, the priests are.
So there's sort of one Old Testament priest, breathing hellfire and damnation, and one New Testament.
Yeah, one more sort of John Denver with a guitar kind of a priest, a groovy priest who would sing, and he gave a bizarre sermon on the first night. he was making some analogy between Jesus and Saving Private Ryan that eluded me, really, the point of it did. And I think he could see people were losing it. And then he started making LSD jokes, which was strange. He reckoned that the reason that the medieval pilgrims would hallucinate was because the mould in the bread possessed the same properties as LSD or mescaline. So he was there with his guitar and his drug references, and he was one of the people. And then the others were more like something out of a James Joyce novel.
I wonder whether your spiritual convictions were enhanced by this experience.
Well, in a strange kind of way, they were. I mean, I partly wanted to see whether I could do it. I mean, I was brought up Catholic. I'm no longer a practicing Catholic, but that doesn't mean to say I don't have an interest in matters spiritual. I wanted to see, first of all, whether I could actually do it. And I also wanted to see what 3 days of such intense exposure to the religious imagery and ritual of my childhood, to see what kind of impact that would have on me. I did feel like a charlatan some of the time because I was terribly impressed by the faith and the devotion of the other pilgrims who were there. And I kept on wondering, I kept thinking, are they going to find me out? Are they going to haul me off for interrogation and find out that I'm not the genuine article?
They say that inside every revolutionary, there's at the heart of a traffic warden. And I thought,
who said that? Alexei Sale.
I think yes. It's in one of his short stories.
Is it? I don't know.
Yes, exactly.
It sounds like him. Yeah.
Yeah. But you started worrying about leg warmers. So.
Well, you find that you start to, even if you don't accept the rules, really, even if you think they're absurd, you start to play along by these rules. And it was in the small hours of the morning, so it's your first sleepless night in this place, and we're huddled against the cold in this night shelter, and we've all got to be barefoot. But there was a woman she had leg warmers on, and she pulled the leg warmers down so that they were over her feet. And I was trying to read us, and I kept thinking, this is outrageous. This isn't in the spirit of things at all. And I think there's a priest over there, and I'm I'm just thinking, have you clocked this? And I found myself, someone should come and punish her. Someone should come and take those leg warmers off her. And then you realise that you've entered into it, and that it's like any game you enter into it. You want to win. You want to be one of the ones who can complete it.
Yeah. So at the time of the Spanish Inquisition, you could have found a place.
Quite possibly, yes. As far away from Spain as possible, I think.
But could you understand the link, or the perceived link, between physical pain, discomfort and spirituality?
I used to be able to. I mean, I grew up as a child not questioning that. It was part and parcel. Little things like not eating meat on Fridays and giving stuff up for Lent. And I remember always being very impressed with the Good Friday service. They didn't used to have Mass on a Friday afternoon. It was too austere to have Mass. And the priest would come out barefoot and would prostrate himself on the ground in church, which I always found a very powerful piece of imagery. So I don't suppose I questioned why all this heavy sadomasochistic stuff was going on in the religion I was following. That just was the case. I remember seeing there's a film called Jabberwocky, which one of the Python lot made. I don't know whether Terry Gilliam directed or Terry Jones directed it. And I think I saw that when I was at university or something. And there's a scene in that where there's all the pilgrims are going along. And they're dressed, they're in loincloths and covered in ashes, and they're beating themselves with uncooked spaghetti. And I thought, at that moment, yeah, it is a bit absurd, really, isn't it? That for me, that captured the whole, what sadomasochistic religion was really about. So I've never bought into it since. Although, intriguingly, a lot of the New Age people seem to be getting into that area of religious experience as well, whether it's sweat lodges, fasting, rebirthing ceremonies of one kind or another. I was buried alive once by a hippie in Australia for a series I was doing for Channel 4 called Desperately Seeking Something, that was about New Age practices and the new paganism. And I started to realise then, well, a lot of these people are into, pushing themselves to the extremes of physical discomfort here. And I did kind of make that link.
Yeah, I'm a bit more, excuse me while I kiss the sky, because I have to say this is the only book about Ireland that I've read that's got Jimi Hendrix and Noel Reading in it.
That's right, yes. You can see Noel play any Friday night in a little pub gig in Clonakilty if you want to go along there, unless he's off doing a Hendrix convention somewhere. I found it was when I was first travelling in West Cork, and I just went into this pub and it said, live music, and I said, who's on tonight? And he said, Noel Reading. And I said, and I looked at him and he said, yeah, the fella from the Jimi Hendrix Experience. And I thought, what the hell's Noel Reading doing playing in a small village in the west of Ireland?
Is he still doing Hey Joe?
No, he didn't do any Hendrix songs when I saw him. He did do Bob Dylan songs and things like that.
Oh yes, because you have this picture of a farmer coming in and dancing wildly.
He'd had a few, the farmer had, yeah. He was a farmer. I can, the
aroma again.
Unbelievable, yeah. I mean, he was an authentic West Cork bachelor. Anyone who's travelled in rural Ireland will know what I mean. That kind of, people who wear a sort of an old sports jacket or suit jacket that's shiny with dung, and a little flat cap, and there's a bit of string is usually involved somewhere, either around the waist or around the legs or something. And I'd gone along to see this guy from the Jimi Hendrix Experience playing in the back room of this pub, and there's about 8 other people there, And then this farmer comes in through the door and looked around like this, and then suddenly wildly dancing like this, and then went back out again, and then he came back in about an hour later and collapsed next to me on the bar. He sat there and then just poof, he was gone, And by that time the room was quite full of people who'd all come along to groove to this 60s rock star. And there's a picture in the bar. You know how bars around the world have photos of pub regulars on holiday in Spain or Florida or whatever it might be, and then they also have photos of zany nights there have been in the pub, the night that everyone dressed up in rubber breasts to publicise bone marrow deficiency or something. And amidst all these photographs is a picture of Noel Reading. There's Noel Reading with Janis Joplin and Bob Dylan, and it's just there on the wall of the pub, and you think, well, was this when Janis and Bob came to Clonakilty for their holidays? Or perhaps was it Woodstock? I mean, I don't know. It's just there on the wall of the bar.
It's difficult to give a lead to you for all the flavours that are in the book, but got to mention that dolphin. What's it called?
Fungi.
It sounds like a special at McDonald's.
It's very famous now. You mentioned Dingle, County Kerry, to people, and most people will say, the dolphin. And, it's become a story.
You must move away. It'll look like you've...
It's become a story in its own right. Will I have a little halo?
Yes, you will. It'll look...
How I've always seen myself, really. I was in Warrington last week, and there was a report on the radio that a dolphin has been seen in the Mersey. There you are. 25 years ago, the Mersey was technically dead. And now this dolphin has been... There's cod and sea trout and salmon in the Mersey now. But a dolphin has been seen following the ferry across the Mersey. But it should watch out, because in 1921, a seal swam up the Mersey and got as far as Warrington. And people flocked out to see the seal. And then someone shot it right between the eyes so they could put it in Warrington Museum, where it sits, as far as I know, to this day. So the dolphin in the Mersey should be careful. Don't go to Warrington.
And they say all this wacky behaviour resides in Ireland. But
a lot of them came over to Warrington, of course, which is...
There's one scene in here where you're in this bar and you're listening and all the accents are British.
Well, it's become one of the... It's the huge change since the 60s, I suppose, since when I used to go there as a schoolboy, is that Ireland has now become a destination for all kinds of people from outside. And last year, partly because of this, it's partly because of the diaspora returning, but it's also people from other countries coming to settle there, that the population had a net increase last year for the first time ever. But all different kinds of people have gone there. Wealthy Europeans who've had lovely holidays there have now gone either to retire there, or a lot of people go there and make cheese. You know, there's a big boom in kind of people thinking, I don't want to be making garden gates in my factory in Rotterdam anymore, even though it's very lucrative. I'm going to go and make weird cheese in Cork. So there are a lot of these little one-off cheesemakers, or people producing perfect anchovy paste or something, going back to real cottage industry type stuff. So those people have gone there. There are the dope dealers, of course, who, because West Cork has such a long and jagged coastline, that massive quantities of cannabis are imported through there, and I think some of those people have settled there. But the English accents that I heard on that first day, it was St Patrick's Day when I first got there, they were all the hippies and crusties and New Age travellers who have left England in large numbers through the 80s and 90s, and who've gone to settle in Ireland because, I don't know, because I think perhaps they feel that their eccentricity will be tolerated more. Certainly they find more open space. And when they were first going there, I mean, 10 years ago they could buy a little ruined cottage for $5,000 or something, whereas now it would cost $100,000. So those days have gone. But lots of those people have gathered there. So West Cork, which used to be, it was the back of beyond when I was a kid, is very cosmopolitan now. You know, Jeremy Irons lives there, David Putnam lives there, Jeremy Paxman goes there and spends the summers there. You know, lots and lots of sort of literary figures and figures from British musical life go there.
Lisa Stansfield. I mean, they've all got houses over there, and even the French are doing it. I interviewed this guy Michel Houellebecq, who's written this sort of pornographic novel, which probably...
Oh, that won't play in West Cork.
Won't it?
Oh, they don't like that sort of stuff. Oh, no. Filth. No, my auntie wouldn't like it anyway. The young people might like it. Sorry, go on.
But the quirkiness, the love of language, the ability to use language, like it's like using sort of glorious... spoons from this nice hotel as a tire lever on, you know, when you get a puncture. They seem to be able to use language in a totally inappropriate but glorious way.
I think, joking aside, I think the reason for that is that even though lots of Irish people now don't speak Irish as a first language, or even as an equivalent language to English, that the rhythms and syntax of the way the Irish speak the language are a translation from Irish. So that in the 19th century, when the language was suppressed on a large scale and people had to start learning English, and a lot of people found English difficult, I think, and so the metaphor and the sentence structure of Irish became incorporated into the English, and it just so happens it works beautifully, doesn't it? I mean, to the English ear, it makes I think the Irish use the language wonderfully well, and I think it's because of qualities that lay buried in their own language.
And just to finish with, the last little encounter that you report in the book, which has all the bizarreness, all the surrealism, seems encapsulated. Who was this guy? Where was he?
You're actually making the hairs stand up on the back of my neck as you mention it. I was in Dunleary waiting to get the ferry back the next morning, and it was I woke up to this beautiful day, clear blue sky, not something you always get in the Dublin area, sea like this table still, and I went out and I walked along the waterfront, and there's a Martello Tower there that features in Ulysses and that's now a James Joyce museum, and there's also a bathing place there where the gentlemen of Dublin have been able to bathe naked for as long as anyone can remember. And I was walking along by there, and there was a guy of about 60, I suppose, sitting drying himself. And I stopped, so I'm standing there, you know, reflecting on this and thinking back on the journey. And this guy struck up a conversation with me, and he said, you know, are you going to go in and have a swim? And it's the best thing in life, and I've been doing it for 25 years. And he asked me where I was from, and then he said to me, he said, you know, this would be a place for you to be. I said, what do you mean? He said, you know, Ireland, Dublin, to come and to live here. And, you know, he had no notion of what I'd spent the last few months doing, and it was something that was foremost in my thoughts of, you know, why not why not actually come to live here? And I thought, this is almost a contrived ending to the book. He felt like he'd been sent in by a film director, or he was a character from another author's book who'd wandered in to give my book the satisfying ending. But that's how it's ended. That was the last conversation I had in Ireland, and this guy saying to me, this would be a place for you to live. Good luck now, he said to me. And I said, good luck. And off I went, and I spoke to no one else. I got on the boat and I came home.